What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm going to go through each game this week and just go over which players I think are worth starting and which players you should probably be looking to sit. I do these videos every single week. Normally, a lot of these players are pretty obvious, but I just think it's generally a good practice to go through each of them and talk about which players I think are going to have good weeks. As always, if you do have any specific start-sit questions, you're more than welcome to ask me in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. I should be able to get back to you either way. Before I do get into the video, I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for all the support we've been getting. The channel's been growing really fast, and it's been really exciting to see that. So, just thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. It's been a lot of fun, having a great time doing all this. But if this is your first time on the channel, I want to thank you for stopping by, and I just want to please ask you that if you do get anything out of this video, please do give it a like. If you like any of the content at all, please do subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell so you get notifications when I put more videos out. It really helps the channel grow, and it really helps you stay in touch and really help make sure your teams perform as best as they can and get better as the season goes on. So that's generally what we're here for. We're just trying to help you guys win as many fantasy championships as possible and just have fun with it. So yeah, with that, let's get into the first game. Starting off with the Thursday night game, we have the Commanders at the Bears. This is going to be a pretty gross game. I can't believe they keep giving us these pretty crappy Thursday night matchups, but that sort of seems to be the trend for Thursday night football. But regardless, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of questions for you guys here. I think you're going to start Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. They've both been consistent enough. I know Terry McLaurin's been a bit of a disappointment, but he's certainly flexible as well as Curtis Samuel. And then on the Bears side of the ball, it's pretty easy. You start David Montgomery and nobody else. As much as Carson Wentz has been in the streaming territory so far this season, I don't think you can look to start him. The whole Bears receiving corp and tight end group is just not getting enough volume, so you can't play single Bears pass catcher. The Washington running backs are a bit of a just show right now. We've got Brian Robinson coming back from his injury. He's getting about 30% of the snaps. Antonio Gibson's getting about 30%, and McKissick's getting the rest of them. So it's a three-headed monster, and that just makes it almost completely unusable. So I'm looking to avoid all those other players in this one. Next game here is going to be the Ravens at the Giants. This one's another pretty easy one for the Ravens. You're obviously going to start Lamar Jackson every week. I think J.K. Dobbins is flexible this week. He hasn't done a whole lot so far since coming back from injury, but he's always a threat to score, and the Giants' defense isn't necessarily one that scares me, although maybe it is about time we start looking at the Giants differently. They are 4-1, but with that, I still think the Ravens will win this game. I think J.K. Dobbins got a good shot of scoring this week. And then you're going to start Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. Those are the top two receiving threats in the Ravens offense, and they're actually throwing it quite a bit, so you can start both of those guys. For the Giants, you're only starting Saquon Barkley. Their passing game's too inconsistent. There's no really healthy receivers there, so you only want to play Saquon. But Saquon's obviously a smash play. I do think that if Devin Duvernay is in play for you, if Rashad Bateman misses this week, I think Bateman's going to play, but keep an eye on it. If Duvernay does miss this game, or if Bateman does miss this game, Duvernay is certainly worth a start. And that's about all in terms of viable fantasy options this week from this game. Next game is going to be the Jaguars at the Colts. On the Jaguars side of the ball, I think you're obviously going to start Christian Kirk. I know he's coming off of back-to-back down weeks, but he's still the clear number one wide receiver in this offense. He's really talented. This Colts defense isn't really one that scares you, so you can play Christian Kirk in this matchup. And I think Travis Etienne is a guy you can play in your flex going forward. We might have seen a bit of a change into the guards so far last week. I know the Jaguars did lose last week, but Travis Etienne did actually out-snap James Robinson. He looked better. He's much more involved in the passing game, so especially in PPR formats, I think Travis Etienne's a guy you can play. Then for the Colts, obviously you're going to start Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. I don't think you can start anyone else in this matchup until we see more. I do think that Alec Pierce eventually is going to be a guy you can play for the Colts, but I wouldn't really love starting him in this matchup. I want to see a little bit more. I don't think you're going to start either quarterback in this matchup, and I think you got to bench James Robinson in this one as well. He's had a couple down weeks in a row. The Colts defense is decent against the run, so I'm not in love with starting James Robinson this week. I get it. Your running back situation could be really bad, especially if you're dealing with bye weeks, so he's not an auto bench, but he's not a guy I'm forcing into my lineup by any means. Next game here is going to be the Patriots at the Browns. On the Patriots side of the ball, I think you're going to start Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, he's the only running back healthy in this lineup, and the Browns just gave up like 200-something rushing yards to the Chargers last week, so Ramondre is in line to be a top 10 play this week. And then he can start Jacoby Myers. He just looks really good. He's got a pretty safe floor with how much PPR volume he's getting, and then if he scores, he's going to have a really nice week. On the Browns side of the ball, you're going to start Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt pretty much every single week. And Amari Cooper's got a good shot this week. He's been sort of ping-ponging between really good and really bad performances, but I think he's a guy you just sort of have to put into your lineup. And then Njoku's a guy who's been involved enough that you're starting him at the tight end position. There's really nobody else that's fantasy viable in this one that I think is even a question mark, so that's really all there is to go for this game. The next game here is going to be the Bengals at the Saints. On the Bengals side of the ball, it's pretty obvious. Again, you're going to start Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. If T. Higgins does miss this game, I think Hayden Hurst is even more of a must-start at the tight end position. But I think even if Higgins plays, you can play Hayden Hurst. Higgins is a guy you have to play, but do monitor those injury reports. Last week, you got a dud with him just because he wasn't able to make it out of the first quarter healthy. So be careful with Higgins if you have better options. I don't hate pivoting just until you see him play healthy, but in general, Higgins is going to be a must start. And then for the Saints, you're going to play Alvin Kamara. He looked great last week. I think he's a guy that you could still be targeting to buy low on so far just because he's only had really one good week this season, but I think he's fully healthy. The Saints offense needs him. So Alvin Kamara is definitely a guy you got to start every single week. And then Chris Olave, if he plays, I know he may have gotten a concussion last week. So if he does miss, then I don't really think there's a Saints receiver you can trust. I don't think Michael Thomas is going to play in this one, but Olave is a guy that I'd be looking to play almost every single week going forward. And I think you got to sit Taysom Hill this week. I know he came off of that massive performance last week, and he does have that insane upside at the tight end position. So I don't blame you if you want to start him, but I just think the most likely outcome is that he ends up with like 20 total yards and maybe a catch. So you're looking at a very low likelihood of him actually having one of those spike weeks, but I get it. If you're the underdog in a matchup, you're just looking for some sort of upside of the tight end position. Taysom Hill's a guy you can play, but I wouldn't be rushing to start him if I could avoid it. Next game is going to be the Buccaneers at the Steelers. For the Buccaneers, you're going to start Brady, Fournette, Evans, and Godwin pretty much every single week, and that's going to be about all. Rashad White has been coming on of late. He's a guy who's getting about 30% of the snaps, so I think you could eventually find him as a flex viable option in some matchups, but until then, I don't really want to start him in my lineup, and otherwise, he's just basically a handcuff for me. So you're going to sit him. On the Steelers side of the ball, you basically have to start Najee Harris. I get it. He's looked really bad, but the volume's there. He's going to be a low-end running back, too, probably, until they eventually shut him down and let Warren get some run, but I think that as long as he's healthy, you got to play Najee. But I do think it's just likely that eventually they're going to give him a couple weeks off. He just looks too hurt. But as far as the pass catchers go for the Steelers, I think Deontay Johnson's going to be a must play. He got 13 targets last week. I know he didn't end up with a very great fantasy performance, but he's a really talented receiver. He's getting the volume, so you got to play Deontay. And then Freiermuth is a guy that you basically have to play at the tight end position, just given how thin it is. And if he's healthy, you've got to play Freiermuth. I know he's dealing with, I believe it's concussion, but if he plays, I think you're playing Freiermuth. I wouldn't play any other Steelers pass catchers, so I'd be benching Chase Claypool and George Pickens, although George Pickens is a guy that I'm pretty excited about going down the stretch. The next game here is going to be the 49ers at the Falcons. This should be a game that the 49ers handle pretty easily, so I think their running game is going to be really effective. You got to start Jeff Wilson just with how good he's looked. Then obviously you're going to start Deebo Samuel and George Kittle every single week. George Kittle I know hasn't given you what you're looking for, but the tight end position is so bad that George Kittle gives you some upside, and you got to play him every single week. And then on the Falcons side of the ball, you're going to start Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I know it sucks. Kyle Pitts has been a bust. Drake London, he really started off hot, but he slowed down. But in general, those guys are going to be must starts for you going forward, even as much as their production might just sort of be up and down with how bad this Falcons offense is ran. But in terms of sits this week, I think Tevin Coleman and Brandon Ayuk are going to be guys you have to sit for the 49ers. Coleman looked really good last week, but he's nothing more than the backup for Wilson. You can't bank on him scoring twice. And then Ayuk, I don't think the Niners are going to have to throw the ball enough for Ayuk to be fantasy relevant this week. And then on the Falcons, I'm going to sit all of their running backs. None of the three between Tyler Algier, Avery Williams, and Caleb Huntley really separated themselves last week. So I don't think any of them are really worth looking at against what's a really good 49ers defense. Next game is going to be the Jets at the Packers. For the Jets, I think you're pretty much starting Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and sitting everyone else. Breece Hall is really taking over that backfield, and Garrett Wilson is really the only receiver that's been any sort of consistent in that offense so far this season. So everyone else is going to be a sit for you guys on the Jets. And then for the Packers, I think you can start Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, Alan Lazard, and Romeo Doubs in this matchup. This should be a game that the Packers handle pretty easily. They're going to look to bounce back after their tough loss in London against the Giants. So I fully expect the Packers to come out and win this game by multiple scores. It's going to be a lot of points scored by the Packers against what's not a very good Jets defense. So I think you can play pretty much every fantasy relevant Packer, but I would sit Robert Tonyan this week. We did see Gene Segura and Mercedes Lewis get involved last week, so I'm not really comfortable starting Robert Tonyan really going forward. The next game is going to be the Vikings at the Dolphins. On the Vikings side of the ball, you're obviously starting Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson every single week. And then for the Dolphins, you're going to start Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. I believe on Wednesday, Raheem Mostert was a DNP. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Note that I am recording this Wednesday night, so keep an eye on Raheem Mostert. If he does miss, I think you can play Chase Edmonds, but I just really don't want to. Also keep an eye on Tyreek Hill's injury status. I know he was in a walking boot after the game. But I'm not going to be looking to start Kirk Cousins or Adam Thielen on this one. I think the Dolphins are going to have a hard time scoring. So I think it's just going to be pretty much a get up early and then lean on the ground game type of week for the Vikings. So I don't think you're going to really want to trust too many pass catchers for the Vikings. And yeah, like I said, Chase Evans is going to be a sit unless Raheem Mostert misses. But do keep an eye on this as well. Myles Gaskin did get more run than Chase Edmonds last week. It's possible that Chase Edmonds got somewhat benched after just really not looking good so far this season. So keep an eye on that. I don't think Gaskin's a guy that you have to monitor at all, but he's certainly someone. It's certainly a situation just keeping an eye on. Next game is going to be the Panthers at the Rams. This one's pretty easy. For the Panthers, you're going to start Christian McCaffrey, and for the Rams, you're going to start Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. Neither one of these teams has had anyone else really perform up to the standards that you'd expect for them. DJ Moore has been a huge bust for the Panthers, and pretty much exactly the same. Allen Robinson's been a bust for the Rams. You can't trust either of those guys. And then there isn't a Rams running back that's being productive at all. They both don't look great. Darrell Henderson's getting a lot less work than Akers, even though he looks better. So I'm just sitting every Rams running back until I see something out of one of them. Next game, what could be one of the higher scoring games this week, is going to be the Cardinals at the Seahawks. The Seahawks have a really awful defense. You're pretty much starting every single Cardinal. You're obviously going to start Kyler, James Conner, Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, and Zach Ertz. I think James Conner is a guy that might actually miss this week, so do keep an eye on Eno Benjamin. He'd be a must start for me if James Conner misses, and I think Eno Benjamin even is a guy that you could play in your flex if you need to with James Conner active. On the Seahawks side of the ball, you're going to start Geno Smith. He's looked really great so far. I think he's going to be a top 12 quarterback this week. You're going to start Kenneth Walker. He's the only running back really healthy for Seattle. I do think DJ Dallas is going to get some run, but not enough for him to be usable in fantasy. And then obviously you're going to start DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They've looked really good so far this season, and I can't see a reason to bench them against what should be a plus matchup in the Cardinals. The only issue for the Seahawks is they haven't spreading out the ball to the tight ends too much, so I can't trust either one of them between Dissly, Fant, or Parkinson, so you're going to sit all those guys this week. What should be the game of the week here? We've got the Bills at the Chiefs. This one's going to be super exciting. I think you obviously are going to start all of the Bills. You're going to start Josh Allen, Devin Singletary, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and Isaiah McKenzie if he plays. If McKenzie does miss again, then I think you can play Khalil Shakir. He looked really good last week, so he's a guy that I think you can get into your lineups in this game. And then on the Chiefs side of the ball, you're obviously going to start Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, but believe it or not, I don't think you can start a Chiefs running back or a wide receiver. There are going to be productive performances from these groups, but you just can't really tell which one. They're spreading the ball around too much at both positions for me to really trust any of these guys. If I have to pick one, I'm probably playing MVS and CEH, but I think both those guys are really low-end options. I think Juju has a shot as well. Any of these receivers could catch a big play, but in general, I'd be avoiding the running backs and the receivers for the Chiefs. Sunday night game is going to be the Cowboys at the Eagles. This one's sort of a hard game to read. I think it could end up being a pretty low-scoring game because I think the Cowboys are going to do a really good job of sort of containing Jalen Hurts more than anyone else has, and obviously the Eagles' defense has been really great. So for the Cowboys, I think you can pretty much only start CeeDee Lamb this week. Dial up's a guy you could play if you need to, but I wouldn't love doing, and both running backs just haven't been great. I don't know which one to predict or which one to expect to score, so if any. So I'd be looking to bench both running backs if I can, and obviously Dalton Schultz is going to be a sit for the Cowboys until we see him healthy. On the Eagles, they've been good enough that I think you still start everybody. So Hurts, Sanders, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert are all starts for me this week. But I'd expect a bit of a down week for them, but I expect to be sort of a lower scoring game than people are expecting. And lastly, we got the Monday night game, which is going to be the Broncos at the Chargers. And this one, I think it's actually going to be a bit of a score fest, despite how well the Broncos defense has performed. So I'm going to start Russell Wilson. I get it; he's been really bad for the first 5 weeks, but I think he's going to get it turned around this week against the Chargers offense. That's going to make him score points. So this is going to be my last week giving Russell a shot, but I think he's going to have a good week this week. You're going to start Melvin Gordon. The Chargers' run defense is absolutely horrible. I think they're 28th against the run so far this season, so Melvin Gordon's going to be a smash start. Then you're going to start Courtland Sutton as well. He's been a wide receiver 1 despite how bad this Broncos offense has been, so if they turn it around, he's in for some really spike weeks. And then on the Chargers side of the ball, you're going to start Herbert, Eckler, Williams, and Keenan Allen. If Keenan Allen plays this week, I do expect Keenan Allen to be back this week. Keep an eye on that. Obviously, with the Monday night performance coming, then it's a little bit hairy because if Keenan Allen does miss, then you might not have any options. So I'd try and get your hands on Joshua Palmer or even like a DeAndre Carter if you need to. But in general, I wouldn't be too worried about Keenan. I expect you to have some sort of information going into Sunday. So, but keep an eye on that for sure. And I think you can start Gerald Everett. He's been super involved for the Chargers. I know he had a bit of a down week last week, but with how thin the tight end position is, I think you can start Everett. I'm going to sit Jerry Jeudy in this one. He just hasn't looked great so far this season. Him and Russ are having a hard time connecting, so I don't really want to trust playing him until I see it. And then Mike Boone's also going to be a sit for me this week. The Chargers' run defense is someone you can expose, so maybe you can play him in a flex if you're dealing with like a Damian Harris injury and Derrick Henry on bye or something like that. But in general, I'd be looking to sit Boone, and then Joshua Palmer is going to be a sit for me unless Keenan Allen does miss this game. I think you could play Josh Palmer if you need to, but again, he'd be a low-end flex play. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.